Welcome to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain.
Welcome to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, and entertain. I'm Shannon Zeman, and thank you for joining us on the most important 15 minutes of your day, where we share expert information on safety and preparedness that you can use in your everyday life. The topic of distance learning has been in the forefront of education strategies and quarantine implementations since the beginning of COVID pandemic. These issues are not only impacting our families, but also our students. So joining me today is Vlad Anderson, who has been a police officer for 28 years. And during this time, he was a school resource officer for over 10 years. Before retiring from the police department, and side note, he was in the military too. So thank you for your service dually.
Thank you.
And is now working in the private sector as child welfare and attendance investigator. So I bet with COVID, you are crazy busy now.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, even more. One of his expertise is informing our communities on the current trends impacting our youth in today's world. And that's why I invited Vlad back to join us today to discuss about the impacts of the distance learning on everyone. So again, thank you for being here.
You're
I
welcome.
enjoyed our conversation last time so much on social media and the impact with our kids that I knew that you had so much knowledge we needed you back. So
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be here.
yes, it's so much fun to have you here. I learn more and more every single time we talk. So I love it. So the first thing we're going to dive into is let's talk about distance learning and the effects that it's had on our educators.
Certainly, through my conversations with many educators, administrators, there's a bit of a challenge with distance learning. They're used to classroom management, addressing issues right off the bat. And unfortunately, because of the distance learning phenomenon on the platform that has been created, they have a very difficult time managing the classroom.
Oh, yeah.
And certainly, I talk in conversations I've had recently, things as occurring, like, for example, kids eating or being in pajamas, or parents involved with their students at home, that hamper the ability for educators to implement the strategies that are effective. And certainly it takes the parents' involvement and encouragement and support of the educators nowadays to get things back on track.
Yes, I agree. Yes, before this pandemic, it was important enough to support your teachers and to, make sure your kids are being academically successful in being involved in it. But now I have a lot of friends that are educators, along with being a parent with children at home. And my gosh, my friends are working, 10 hours a day trying to manage these things and engage children that are at home, and you have them on this teeny tiny screen.
Totally.
It's just, it's impossible, I think, to figure this whole thing out. It
is very challenging. And when you talk to the educators who are passionate about teaching, one thing that they get graded on is their ability to manage the classroom. And certainly with the distance and people not being in the classroom, and some of the models that have been created to offer enhancements, educational enhancements, the teachers are having to do twice, if not three times the amount of work, just to keep the kids focused on task and capable of managing through this crisis that we're facing.
And engagement too. It's just,
totally.
The kids don't want to be singled out, right? Because if they talk, their picture goes right up on the screen. And so to get feedback or to have kids asking educational questions or even questions just to help them, I'm sitting at home telling my kids, why aren't you answering the question your teacher's asking? Like, engage with your teacher. It's just,
and so you see some kids, some practices where kids don't appear on the Zoom screen. They don't interact with the teachers. And I've seen some kids produce a picture of themselves. They'll take an image, a shot of themselves, and post that as the image that the teacher sees. So then the teacher is managing, trying to manage the classroom with 25, 30 students, and she doesn't have the time or the ability to look at body, a posture, body language, and things of that nature, and be able to find out who is on task and who is not.
Can you imagine if those kids, if they could just take that knowledge, that little intelligence that they have with what they figured out there, and put it into school?
Totally.
Right? That's just so amazing. So, okay, so let's go on to what are the social emotional issues that are the problems impacting our families?
Social emotional has to do a lot with the experiences that they have in everyday life, and they learn how to cope with crisis. With something simple as bullying, as being bullied in the classroom, a kid builds not a defense mechanism, but an ability to manage that issue through the opportunities that exist. Many kids are being challenged and are incapable of building that skill set. So social emotional support is something that has to be incorporated now by many school districts to support the student, because they're not getting that interaction and the peers or even adult responsibilities through social media, through the platform that we have created so far.
Yeah, I would say school is, elementary, junior high, and then especially high school is where we learn so much about handling communications with others, communications with the same sex and opposite sex, authority wise, right? Respecting and having your authorities as your teachers and principals and things like that. And
absolutely. And you not only have the rigor of the academic challenge, but you have the social aspect. I mean, the socialization that occurs and the cultural interaction that occurs with many students. And one thing that is important that I've discovered is common sense, which is referred to as executive functioning skills. Is not being experienced by the students, and you hear and you see and you feel the anxiety, the stress, and the frustration in parents and students alike, because of the setting that they're having to perform their academic task.
Yes, that's really good.
It's very, very challenging.
Yes, I think that's something that we all have to pay attention to, because I think being that I already went through it, right? Sometimes you don't even think about all of those steps that you went through as a kid and how those became successful steps.
Absolutely. Like we think about common sense. How do you develop common sense? It's through experiences. And unfortunately, we're not having those experiences. And certainly it is a concern that is going to have to be addressed not only by educators, but certainly by administrators, but certainly society as a whole. What was common sense back in the day, is it going to be common sense in the future? Because those kids there was a frame, time in place where they were unable to develop that skill set.
I could go on this topic forever, because it's even like reading social, like body cues and sentence structures and things like that. Being on a platform where it's teeny tiny squares and interacting with people, it's like those. How do they learn how to read those social cues?
How do they learn? Absolutely, and that is an excellent question. How do they learn? How to develop that ability to read people and interact with other folks? And that's what we're losing, unfortunately.
That's really that's a scary part. I'm like, I don't want them to do that. I need my kids to understand when I'm giving them the look, it's the look, right?
but imagine if you gave them the look from afar. From
this big.
From a little square on the screen. I mean, could they actually understand that? No. I would say no.
I would say no too. Or they just want to ignore it. I didn't see it.
Yes.
So let's see. So what are school districts doing to address this, unforeseen condition?
Fortunately, a lot of school districts are seeing that there is a lack of social emotional support, and they're implementing strategies to deal with those factors. Certainly the issues, the social issues such as poverty and inequality that exists in every society. But the issue of social emotional support is something that is being addressed in many school districts, or they're making an attempt. The key point that I see is the funding. They have to strategize now and look at where the funding would go for projects, and certainly, hopefully, we can get the support, financial support, to get these things in place.
Yeah.
But the problem is that it's going to be a long-term problem, and it's something that we need to be able to see how it's going to impact us in 5 to 10 years from now.
Right, and I think even with the students going back to school, they're going back to school in such a different structure. They're going back in minimal numbers. They're going back in these cubicles that are keeping them away again from that social interaction. And then if they even get to eat lunch, they're having to be 6 feet apart from their friends to even have lunch. So, or they're watching a teacher talk from the front behind a plexiglass, and the teacher's not even able to come over and interact with students.
Oh, absolutely. And in my conversations with educators, I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
They're challenged. They went to college, they learn a certain way of teaching, and now it's going off. Now they're having to brainstorm new ideas and new ways to manage their classroom and implement, again, the educational opportunities.
And they became teachers to interact with the students.
Oh, totally.
And now they're not getting to interact the way that they want to, and that's successful, and that these kids need.
Right, and we see distance learning, and distance implies a separation, right?
Right.
And remember the teacher that would put your hand in your back and say, "It's okay."
Yeah.
It's okay.
Right.
It doesn't occur anymore.
No.
And that interaction that we need as human beings is very, very important.
Yes, I agree. I'm a social person. If you can't tell. And I'd need that. Yeah, you need that interaction, that social interaction, and the laughing and being in the classroom and giving your friend like that silly look, those are all things.
Totally. Now we got plexiglass, and in best case scenario, plexiglass and mask.
Yeah.
When you can't read the person, whether they're smiling or they're angry.
Right. Yeah, it's so true. Yeah. So, so can students maneuver over the present platform and succeed in this?
In my opinion, yes. I think we have some great educators and some great administrators that are being presented with something, and they had to act immediately. I think it is of my opinion, I've seen them work and devote a lot of time and effort, that they can find ways to address distance learning and make it more effective and more fruitful for the individual student and family, because certainly families are being impacted as well. Mom and dad, they're having a very difficult time as well.
Oh yeah, because if the parents are at home, they're trying to be successful at whatever their job they have at home, and then they're having to proctor their children, which that's hard enough to do when they're in school and then they come home, but then you have them all day. And so it really changes the dynamic of a parent-child, a relationship also.
Totally. I went, it reminds me of a visit that I did to a home, and I didn't find the people at the residence, but I spoke to a person that was working property management at the facility. And she was very, very stressed out and anxious because she was experiencing some challenges. She was saying, "Hey, you know what? I work an 8-hour shift, 8-hour day at work. I go back home, and instead of relaxing, I have to help my kid succeed in school.
Right.
And I go home. I go home, and I stay up to 11 o'clock. Sometimes miss my dinner because I have to support my kid, my kid's success. And many folks, unfortunately, are finding that issue and encountering that issue, and they need help. And I think it's okay to ask.
Yeah,
it's okay to ask.
And I think also, as I'm seeing with my two boys are two completely different learning styles, right? And I'm hearing from my friends as we are opening up with frustration or concern or anything with each other that, there are kids that are being very successful at this, but especially like with one of my children, there are kids that are really, really struggling. And we have to have that in understanding. Like we still can't allow like, okay, you're not turning in your homework. That can't be allowed. But we also have to take into account like this is hard for everybody, and how we need to like kind of come together to make it successful for educators, for the students, for the family. And that's just where do we go from that?
Yeah, unfortunately, there are many conditions that are being impacted. As I told an administrator recently, the people that were on the border that were kind of tittering are totally failing now.
Yeah.
And certainly you have people being successful, but even then it's not easy. And I hear that time and time again, and I completely empathize and sympathize with what they're saying.
Yeah.
But it is challenging. But you know what? Many years ago, I learned that it takes a community to make things successful. And certainly education is that kind of community. And it cannot be done alone. And people have to be able to tell us that they're being challenged and that they're having difficulties. And we have to be able to try to provide them the support that they need. And it does take a community, even more so. But we live in a society and we live in a culture where we can take where we are willing to take the additional step to address the problem, the social problem and the social condition that is impacting all of us.
Yes. And I think that's beautifully said. And I think like how you're saying, it takes a village. I know like for my kids, one of the things that would really help with them is that they're being contacted and reached out to more just on, that tactile touching base, whether it's an email or instead of expecting the children to go ask for that help. And I'm not the teachers are doing plenty, I get that, but maybe for, if the schools have that counseling aspect or different things, I think that would be a great thing, because these kids are having a hard enough time reaching out in a classroom, let alone, reaching out constantly for help.
Totally.
Yeah.
And we need to realize what's impacting our students and get a better understanding and study it. It's an evolving process, and with time, we'll get it.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I really appreciate you being here. I think we'll probably have Vlad talk to me a little bit more about something else, because we could just keep on going on and on. So I will definitely dig deeper into Vlad's mind another day and educate us some more on this, because I think it's very valid. So thank you so much for being here and sharing that.
Well, thank you, Shannon.
Yeah, absolutely. So next week, Kira Hume is going to be joining me, and she's going to give us a crash course on type 1 diabetes. I think it's going to be really relevant. I know nothing about it, so I'm really excited to learn about that. So thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Passionate World Talk Radio. You can listen to this program all over again by going over to https://passionateworldtalkradio.com. You can also hear it on Spotify, Spreaker, Amazon Alexa, AMFM247.com every Tuesday evening between 8 and 9 p.m. YouTube, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, and all the other podcast directories one can find on the internet.